Oh, all right. So, also, Eduardo, we'll send out a recording after. I'll send it over to you so anyone can jump on and check it out. But welcome back. It's been a couple weeks of a hiatus here, and I feel like there's been so much stuff that's gone on over the last couple of weeks. I don't even know where to start really, but I figure let's just start with the simple question. What is it that you are seeing currently in the market that you think is the most important thing we should be paying attention to? And maybe that's not the question you want right now, but after being off a couple weeks, I guess fill us in on what it looks like down there.
Okay, we could start talking about the soybean
Yeah.
situation in China, for example, and of course in Brazil. Last Thursday, and then we had a made shipment in Brazil, FOB, traded at 105 dollar per cents per bushel over CBOT. So it was a the peak of the season, and for the harvest time period, we only see this very high basis only two times. One, 2020, 2018, because of the beginning of the trade war, and then 2022 because of the crop frost. Sorry, the crop failure. But this year it was no sense for many people in the market. It was not expected for sure, but it was a kind of development, combining the harvest the slow to slow, the short squeeze in terms of logistic, and then the USTR. Last week we had this kind of speculation, and now we have some schedule, so it could be a threat for traders up to the end of the year, but not now. Then I think it's a combination of this, and then today for yesterday, for example, May shipment traded at 70 cents over, so 50 cents off the high. In China, the same. We see a very big drop this week, 20 cents, May and June. So the premium market in for Brazil in CFR, it's been very, it's oscillating a lot.
What do you think has caused the slowdown? Like one of the things that seems to be obvious to me right now is China was relatively aggressive late last year with purchasing Brazil beans for February, March timeframe. But now, you're not really seeing that sort of aggressive pace. Like granted, they have a lot of beans set to arrive, but usually you would think that you'd see them starting to cover June, July, August, September, right? Are they? Or, is it sort of a slow pace that's impacting things?
Yeah, that's a good point. For example, up to the end of the last year, the total purchases for Brazilian crop was record high, 31 million tons total. The prior year it was 26 million tons, which was record, the former record. So very aggressive. Many reasons. At that time, the Prussian margin in China was good. The structure of the curve, the flat price curve, CFR was in very strong carry, which is a very good incentive to overload the front load March, May, and April. But now the margins are not there. It's very thin. It's very difficult to sell soybean meal for different months. For example, June, July, September. The end users in China, they know Brazil now is performing very good in terms of shipments, and they know in May this very low soybean stocks will invert to a lot of, or maybe larger than last year. So China turned from bullish in the spot market to very bearish for all the curve.
The hopeful person in me is that they're doing it to prepare for a phase two trade agreement, but that might just be my crazy thoughts because I feel like it's more market driven than anything else that we're seeing. What are you seeing for domestic values though? Like, China's slowed down on their buying. Are crushers, because there was some talk of really expensive diesel fuel, some push that they wanted to remove your biodiesel blend or lower the biodiesel blend because of the cost. Soybean oil had spiked. There were a few weird, it just felt weird in the market structure in and of itself. Like it didn't, two and two was not making four in Brazil's market. You're seeing a
No.
spike in soybean oil, you're seeing a spike in soybean meal. Like why? What has been going on in here? And so what is the domestic market makeup that, is creating some of these weird, for the lack of a better term, like it just doesn't add up to me from a cash trader standpoint. What's driving that?
Oh yes. So of course, crushers in Brazil, they are participating. They are bidding above the export parity, especially this week because of the FOB levels went down, CFR levels went down. But in flat price in Brazil, in our currency, it's kind of same. So if you put the math together and then you're going to see bases in Brazil, for example, Mato Grosso, it's in the peak of the year and it's more expensive than the last year. And the last year in Mato Grosso, we had the crop failure, and this year we have a record crop. So very weird. Um, I would say lack of a space, which was very expected for anticipated for this year. We didn't have any report of farmers selling they don't have space to room more beans. That's the first point. The second point is the bill inputs. Farmers in the last 3 years, because the sentiment was very bullish for prices, they just purchased the inputs, fertilizer, chemicals, whatever, and whole beans or corn. Then this year, because I think they learned it is a too much risk to take, they they did more barter. Because of that, they don't have this cash flow need as the last 3 years. And April is very important in terms of schedule, the calendar in Brazil. April and August are the 2 months farmers they need to sell beans or corn to pay the bills. So it is this year it's not happening. So no problem in terms of room, and more barter instead of bills to pay anyway, uh, now in April. Then Brazil is getting expensive more and more.
It's so interesting to me, because we had this type of conversation last year to a certain extent around the US where the lack of farmer selling in a way manipulated the cash market to look like there was a shortage, or you know what I mean, like if as a merchandiser, right, you pay attention to basis and spreads, and then they're supposed to tell you, kind of what's going on with the overall supply. So to see basis rally like we've seen, in the market structure to invert, it used to tell you that there was a crop problem or that we just didn't have enough supply to meet demand, which is still true, but now it's like the supply can just be put away in a different, it's just a different sort of structure around the world as we've increased space. Your silo bags imports have been record high. That in and of itself is just something that I'm going to continue to pay attention to for a lot, because the more you see lower prices too and carry incentivizing storage, the more that the farmer around the world gets, smarter, or at the very least gets to where they withhold supplies sometimes and can really kind of change the market in the whole scope of it's really interesting. Um, Carl, anything on soybeans that you want to add, Eduardo, or ask Eduardo before we talk about corn?
Eduardo, I got just a question. It's kind of on soybeans, but it's kind of on the market on a whole. Uh, China announced this morning that with the tariffs with the United States, that it really wouldn't impact their commodity reserves. China feels even with tariffs in the US escalating that they'll be okay. But they made a statement that they look, they'll make it through this. It will alter global trading patterns. And I've said this forever. Grain flows like water. Once you move it or alter its path, it stays that way. Have you seen anything on your end in Brazil that would indicate China is shopping for maybe a little bit more inventory out of Brazil because of the tariffs?
Earl, it's a very good point. If we go back and take a look, for example, 1819 and 1920, China, even though with 25% tariffs over on US soybean, they purchased 13 million tons and then 15 million tons. I can't see different because if, for example, right now, the share of China, the Chinese share in terms of our shipments, is 77%, which is record high. It used to be, the range is 68 up to 72%, which is very high. So I can't see higher than that, 77%. If we keep this very high level of 77% up to the end of the year, and Brazil export, for example, 106, 107 million tons, which is very large program, then China will still need to buy around 20 million tons, 18, 20 million tons. Could purchase part of that, not more than 5 million tons from Argentina. I'm very skeptical about that, maybe 3 million. Then the rest will be out of the US for sure. If they don't do this, they will have a serious problem in terms of supply, Jan, Feb of the next year. So Carl, I didn't see anything different because right now only crushers, commercial crushers, are participating in the market. But I do think October, November, December, China, especially Sino and COFCO will purchase the US. Of course, the big if is this USTR. That's the key to understand how market will evolve in this dynamic. Because if you put everything together, all the way goes to Brazil selling more and more, not only soybean, but soybean meal and corn. But Brazil can't sell all the volume that market needs. For example, to Europe, more 5 million tons. We sell, usually we sell 5 million, we can double to 10 million. No. So it's a very complex situation. And premiums in Brazil is getting very volatile, more than the futures because of that.
It's always interesting to see how the tail wags the dog, so to speak. Um Carl, anything else? Any follow-up on the bean side of things?
But
Let's talk about go
just
ahead.
to add
Yeah.
something, you know, uh, I see a very small, right now, small percentage odd for a bullish market in the US, the soybean. If you have the US, a very big drop in terms of acreage. In China, yes, all year, yes, by 15, at least 15 million tons. And then Europe, more 5 million tons. And then you have 45 million tons in export program. And then larger crush. So don't know if the US S&D can get tighter during the
Lost Eduardo for a second. Um Let's jump over to corn because I forgot where we were. If you remember where we were, then you're better than me. But
Yeah, the a
yeah,
bullish case scenario
yes,
for
on beans, yeah.
security. Yeah. Yeah, that could be a surprise for the market because I hear many people talking about no, China will buy zero in the US.
Oh,
It's
I
not true.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Even
like,
though
they'll at
with
least
tariffs.
come some way. It's all dependent to Argentina will play a role to a certain extent, right? There's some changes there that we've seen. Milei said he will not devalue the currency on a few other things. But it'll be an interesting year and how it all plays out and what we see from a buying standpoint. We do have, speaking of China, phase one, all of that stuff, before we move over to corn, we do have the phase one review will wrap up on Wednesday. And so, or Tuesday, with the announcement on Wednesday on what was found, the review and all that stuff. That gets announced with the reciprocal tariffs. All right. I tried to mute myself and then I unmuted myself just in time to cough. So this is it's amateur
Yeah,
hour around here on my part. Let's talk about corn. What are we seeing? There were rumors last week, right, that Brazil had bought US corn. Is that true? Was it true? Have you heard anything about it? Do we see more of that, or was it just a fluke? Because we have seen basis back off too across Brazil, right? As conditions have improved and some of that. So, what's happening there in the corn market?
oh yes, we had this rumor because the math was good, the calculation was good for Argentina, the same for the south of Brazil and the west for the northeast. It's a Fortaleza port. It's a region, a poultry region. Every sometimes we have this good calculation for that part because it's very far from the from Mato Grosso or from Goiás. It's more than 1,000 kilometers away. And the spot market is still very expensive, but we didn't have any confirmation yet. Even though if we take a look to the Argentina and the US, but of course the government month ago it was support government was supporting the importation of foods, corn, oil, whatever, to try to manage the inflation. Yeah, that could be, but we have to keep following the lineup in Brazil, and then if we had something, then it's going to show up, but no confirmation yet.
What do you think about it going forward? Like, what are we seeing? What are you seeing in the domestic pipeline for supply? Have you seen more corn start to work its way into the southern regions as first crop corn harvest has started? Or, what are you seeing here in the nearby for corn? And then we'll talk a little bit more about safrina.
And April month is the key, and the weather. For example, we have two situations. Up north, Mato Grosso and Goiás is very good in terms of weather, and then Goiás was not so good, but now more rains and everything is fine so far. So good crop is coming there. But this corn is more the it's going to move to export corridors, not to will come back to the south regions. Then the Paraná is very important, my state, and it's not good, not good. Many producers here they are assuming we they have a crop failure, no doubt. So because of that, in Paraná, part of south of Mato Grosso do Sul and São Paulo, then we have a not good situation. Then maybe Argentina corn will come to the south of Brazil for April shipment or May shipment. The calculation is still good comparing to the local market and local offers, safe industrial plants, uh, most of them hog and poultry plants. So it's possible. It's possible. The calculation is good.
Every time I go to hit the unmute button, it pops up some MSN thing for me to click on. So I get ugh. Um, what are your thoughts on exports overall as we look ahead? You know, the USDA is at what 45, or I know they're at a higher level than I know you are. But what is your, now I want to pull it up and make sure I'm not, you know, what are your thoughts on corn exports? Not only, you know, the next couple of months, obviously we don't have much in the way of corn able to move out of Brazil. But what about after new crop? When do you think the export program will start out of Brazil? And you know, to what extent will we see it? How much will be available to ship into the world market?
Okay, it's very important, and the market in Brazil is changing because the flat price is the same. Our Mato Grosso, Goiás is the same. A little bit more expensive for safrinha, for example, July, August, and September shipments. But the replacement is getting more expensive. The origination margin is very negative, 40 cents, 50 cents. In the last few years, because of the take or pay commitments, tradings didn't have choice. They had to keep flowing corn, buying corn, originating corn, and selling in the FOB market, making a huge loss. Last year, for example, 70 cents, 80 cents per bushel of negative margin. This year, they are not so committed. And because of that, now we have 30 cents, 40 cents difference between the originating cost, FOB Santos, and FOB level. Because of that, they are reverting part of what they already purchased to the internal market. So the arbitrage is happening. Because of that, I think July, for example, July program in Brazil will be smaller, giving to the US more space to keep selling. Argentina is the same, is very expensive. Yesterday, traded April at 97 cents over May. In Brazil, traded September, last September yesterday at 100 cents over September in the US. So the flat price for April, May, June, and July, the US is more competitive. The difference is $10 per bushel, $10 per ton, cost and freight, South Korea. So the US will keep selling. In Brazil, I still think the USDA is too optimistic in terms of the whole program. Our number is 38 million tons, not more than that because it's too expensive. And I don't believe farmers will decrease the level in terms of flat price. The surprise could be the effects for sure. If it goes up and rally again, and then for sure Brazil will get cheaper than now.
Yeah, I
But
double
it's not the
checked
case.
sorry, the USDA is at 44 million metric. I said
44 million.
to say 45. And I'm like, wait, no, I don't want to say that because I get wheat sometimes. But no, they went from 46 to 44. But you still feel like there's another 6 million metric ton, give or take, which is about 230 5 million bushels worth of export swing that's gonna have to go somewhere. And you know, right now, you know, we'll see how the year progresses for the Northern Hemisphere, but you know, Argentina did not, I mean, they have a good crop, but they're probably, it's not as good as what it was expected to be in corn either. So it'll be interesting to see how the US benefits from that here as we move forward, or if we do. Just imagine if we didn't have the USTR, the freight, the port fees, and the worry over tariffs over our head. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about the alternate world corn might be living in, just simply because we don't have much in the way of world supply. Ethanol demand looks like it'll continue to rise because we're exporting ethanol. I'd heard, you know, that was going to be my next question, you know, while talking about ethanol. There's been some conversation that Brazil may look to the US for ethanol if the US works with Brazil on sugar. Have you heard anything about that? Like, are you hearing anything about the US and Brazil working with each other on some trade negotiations? We did have aluminum and steel tariffs. They do impact Brazil to a certain extent. You know, is there anything that you think we see come out of that at all from what you're hearing on your end, or no?
No, I didn't hear anything about the sugar in ethanol, but
Yeah.
for sure, if you have something, please share. But the point is, yesterday, the Trump team mentioned about Brazil about tariffs, but it was not so clear if they will apply tariffs on Brazil for over everything, or no, Brazil will be a country that we are going to leave alone, for example. So that's a good point to understand about the everything, every deal that we can have with the US. So big doubt.
So much fun, so much uncertainty. We'll know more eventually, and then we'll just have more questions to ask. Carl, anything you want to talk about on the corn, ethanol, anything side of things, or do you have another question?
The only thing, Eduardo, and I'd seen this week, that some of the corn-based ethanol plants that have been proposed in Brazil have maybe been delayed or suspended. Um,
The
can you
biodiesel,
not the ethanol
ethanol, okay.
is is that just because I believe that there's, correct me if I'm wrong, what, 22 corn-based ethanol plants in Brazil right now? And you guys are looking at doubling that in the next few years. Is it the economics of ethanol, or is it corn, or is there a reason, or is it just, maybe is there a bigger reason for the delay in plants being built?
Okay. Yes, Carol. It's a we have a lot of new projects coming in. In 5 years, the rough number is this year. My number is crush corn crush for ethanol 25 million tons, which is a big number. Then in 5 years we have some numbers, of course, depending on the projects or in the expansions. That could be 36, 37, up to 40 million tons. I don't know if we are going to have this growth the same pace in terms of production in Brazil. The problem is money, for sure. The first problem is this, because the interest rate in Brazil is very expensive, and we had a very smaller amount of special loan lines or credit lines from the government subsidized to build new plants. So this is the first problem, and I think it's very important. And the other is a technical problem. We had a lot of delayed projects because of the lack of supply, or people, engineers, or other um, inputs that we need to do that. So of course, this I think it's a too optimistic, but it's growing. 25 million tons this year is changing the market and changing the whole basis in Brazil. Imagine if in 5 years we have 40 million tons, and then the US will export for sure. They will export corn for Brazil, and Argentina the same, because this create a kind of depending on the period of the year. For example, from Jan up to May, we have no corn for that. But that is the idea. The new projects they are keep increasing the consumption.
Do you ever get to the point where we see a reduction in soybean acres planted in the fall for full season corn? Or maybe a flop where if the corn market's strong enough,
Good
they
point.
plant corn and then double crop soy. I mean, I have no idea if it's even possible, but put soybeans in after the corn, potentially a shorter day variety or something. I mean, it's just so interesting to think about all of the changes, because I feel like and that's why I love doing this conversation with you once a week, because I feel like a lot of folks in US agriculture have heard that Brazil is growing at X rate, and they just assume that that is a yearly, every year you're going to grow 10%, every year you're going to eat our lunch. Like that's the thing, and what folks don't really realize is that Brazil is aggressively expanding your domestic demand, in a way that could alter the entire global market structure. Um, and not only Brazil is doing that though, like you see a lot of countries around the world that are really increasing their ethanol blend rates, their biodiesel, renewable diesel blend rate. Like I think it's going to be fun to watch the next 5 years because I think we have this assumption about how things are going to play out. And to me, it looks very different. Just looking at basis rallying throughout what's supposed to be a record soybean harvest.
Yes, yes.
All of
Yeah.
these things, like what we think we know, we don't really know. And just because it shows up on a spreadsheet doesn't mean it's in the pipeline. So it's going to be, like I said, that's what makes me so excited about these conversations each week is now the focus is on what's going on with Brazil. Soon we'll get to shift over to, growing conditions and things like that in the US. But in the meantime, there's a lot to be paying attention to. It's not as cut and dry as what we want to think it is. Um, we're at the end of our time here. Anything that you want to add, Eduardo, before we call it a week? Or anything you think we should be thinking about ahead of next week?
Just to point, I think about you just said about the market. Like the West in 07, 08 crop because of the ethanol expansion in number of plants in the West, we have the same dynamic in Brazil because once you start new projects, new plants, and then it's profitable, then this is going to keep increasing. I see the same change in the market, in corn market, as we had in the West at that time. And the other thing is China has no friends anymore. No Canada, no Europe, no the US. So only Australia now, and of course Brazil and Argentina. But Argentina is it's my friend, but they don't have the tools that I need. So this is a big shift in terms of how the price formation is in Brazil, because you have for sure the futures, but you also have the premiums, and premiums are moving too fast and too strongly because the market is changing too fast. So this is a good, very important point to follow during this next 5 years or 4 years, if we assume Trump will be there for 5 years, for 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch. Like I said, it's not as cut and dry as we like to think it is. And like you said before with China, they're not going to go to zero US soybean imports or anything like that. It's just something that could be variable or interesting as we go ahead. Carl, anything you want to add before we call it a week, or you happy it's Friday too?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right, next week we'll be back.
Make some
Yeah, that's what next week we'll be back on Thursday, right? We're gonna move it to Thursday, Eduardo. Is that what you're wanting to do?
Okay,
We'll talk. Yeah.
good.
Well, you'll see an update on the time. Anyone that's registered or anyone that wants to watch, and we always share it on our YouTube channel shortly after. You'll find it on Twitter. I'll get our little hiccup in the middle edited out, and I'll get it all posted and all that good stuff. So don't hesitate to reach out if you guys are watching this and you have any questions ahead of next week. There's tons to be talking about. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, Eduardo, I appreciate your time as always and your knowledge. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, see you guys.
See you
Thanks,
later.
Eduardo.
Bye bye.
Bye.